They say you should learn something new every day. Like how you should only drink Jägermeister at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, ice cold. Like those frozen cavemen they find, which makes you wonder, what would a caveman think of Jägermeister? Well, if you served it warm, he'd probably throw it in your face, say, "Unga boonga," and storm off. And nobody wants that. So drink it cold or not at all. Jägermeister. Damn, that's cold. Drink responsibly. Jägermeister liqueur, 35% alcohol by volume, imported by Mast Jägermeister, U.S., White Plains, New York.
I am your host, Stassi Schroeder. Welcome to Tell Me Lies, the official podcast. What's the most unhinged thing of season 3?
Steven, because he's so evil.
I do think he is misunderstood.
You see everyone face consequences.
It's intoxicating. The writers just know how to trick you.
There's always a twist in this show. It's nothing you would expect.
Tell Me Lies, the official podcast, now streaming, and stream the new season of Tell Me Lies on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like the Let Me Be Frank podcast. If you want big football talking points, great stories, plenty of laughs and top guests, join me, Frank McAvenny and Simon Houston for Let Me Be Frank. Just search Let Me Be Frank wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Bilbao, let's be having you. Leinster and Ulster are en route. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the InterPro show, your home for all things Irish rugby. And what a show we have tonight, looking back on 2 European semi-final victories. And joining me to do so, our Leinster fan, David Cordial, our Ulster fan, Adam Latham, and our very neutral but very happy man in Ennis at the weekend, Ben Leahy. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on. Ben, I'll get the elephant out of the room with yourself. You watched Limerick win in Ennis, then you watched United beat Liverpool, and Treaty had a last-minute winner on Monday. So, a good weekend, yeah?
I've had way worse weekends. When your hurling team can score 230 missing their 2 best players against your local rivals aren't even real. I mean, what more do you want to happen the weekend? You know, it's fine. I'm sorry to anyone from Clare, you're very real. But also, I saw Virginia Rugby this weekend. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let's go.
Gotta love highlights. He basically just listened to those 2 minutes of Andy Good, and that caught him up on the entire Bordeaux Bath game, which we're not going to talk about. But Adam, you're the only one of us who wasn't at a game this weekend, it should be said. But how was your weekend? Spurs won.
Yeah. Spurs won. Tranmere safe from relegation as well.
That's the big news of the day, really.
That is, to be fair, it was mad. I was invited to the game as well, and I was like, I can't. I'm watching Leinster. So it was one of those. I was like, oh. But yeah, it went all right. All things considered, the week. But yeah, it was nice. It was a really nice weekend. The rugby was nice. I watched, Montpellier v the Dragons in what felt like one of those Princess and the Pauper moments when you saw the Dragons come out of the bus and you're kind of like, oh, what? Okay.
I actually think it's more cops and robbers, but that's different about prison or FC.
Yeah, to be fair. Yeah, it looked like when, you see those people that really fell in love with Pierce, like, is it Pierce Brosnan? No, that's not the one that is in jail a lot. I forgot his name. Anyway, not James Bond, but anyway, Paul Bronson. Anyway.
I thought you were going to say Piers Morgan.
Are you talking about Charles Bronson?
Charles Bronson. It's like those people that fall in love with Charles Bronson. That's what Newport did.
Bronson Ross.
Bronson
remember
Ross.
him?
Do you remember? Is he a pub goer or a park runner? But anyway, it was a nice
Have
weekend.
to hope I someday meet Pierce Brosnan so I can tell him a friend of mine mistook him for Charles Bronson.
A fine Ulster man himself, Pierce Brosnan as well.
Maybe we should be a GA.
He's from Navan.
You know that?
I literally said about 30 seconds before we hit record that we might be the rugby version of Guide to Parenting, and I think we have just established that straight out
I'm
of the
like, we're
gate.
not 5 minutes in, and I've been pushed to defend Meath. Like, what the fuck is this?
Well, Meath can't defend
What
themselves.
is
That's why they got knocked
what
out of the Leinster
Hey,
Championship. But
I say that
yeah.
about Claire, and you give out to me. Wait now for
what
a
No,
even
second.
you
is
said
a
Clare.
Meath?
You said Clare wasn't a real place. That's a huge difference. That's reserved for the likes of Roscommon, okay? So just get this clear. Said as a proud goal man. Lads, we're going to talk about rugby, okay? We have 2 games to get to. This shouldn't take us too long, but by
Too
Christ, it
long.
fucking will. And we will start with the big one in Dublin Way as Leinster pip past Toulon 29-25 and return to their ninth European Champions Cup final, including the Heineken Cup era, of course. David, you were there, as was I. You noticed me in the press box from miles away. You've a great phone, it should be said. I should really reply with that at some stage, as opposed to feck off. But for Leinster, they are back in the big time in Bilbao.
We are, and Bilbao, many happy returns. It was a sight of happy huntings for us 8 years ago, and we're finally back. So, yeah, no, it's a big one. It was a great day. A lot was made of the fact that it didn't sell out. It's frustrating. I think Aviva fatigue is a very real thing. The crowd that were there gave a good account of themselves. There were some hearty Toulon supporters. A couple of them behind me got louder as the match went on. Credit where it's due. But yeah, no, it was a God. It became a serious test. It was it kind of emblematic of Leinster season in a way because there was a lot of good players playing a lot of good rugby, and then a small bit of mental lapses that made it a much tighter contest than we felt it really should be from the start. To start it out, like Leinster have built up this kind of habit over the last certainly the last few games of putting in very good blocks in games and not quite getting out of those blocks what you would feel they deserve to. I think it was my mom who was sitting next to me said, if you just looked at the rugby being played on the pitch, you'd assume the scoreline was much more larger than it is. But Leinster just weren't getting the points. And we could see in the Ulster game how important it was because we racked up the scoreline there, and Ulster's spirited response wasn't enough to overcome it because of the scoreline. And I was terrified that this was going to not happen in this game because, after building out to what was it, a 12-6 lead, you kind of felt like if Leinster can get to the half time, particularly Andrew Porter going off, that you're like, maybe, we can hold out here, and it's not the worst return in the world for a first half, but losing Harry Byrne, Troy scored again. It just felt like we're going in at half time, and it's basically almost level again. Harry Byrne, I think, will be very frustrated with that first half. He did something that you really never want to do in games where he compounded errors. He missed shots at goal he should not have missed. He missed a kick to touch. Now, I will say in Harry's defense, I have to double check this, but um, apparently the Toulon player who jumped to keep the ball in play jumped from touch, which technically speaking means he should have caught it and landed back in the field, not slapped it back.
From
So
from my angle, it looked like he was
technically
in
it should have.
play from
Yeah.
where I was, but I was the other side of the field, to be fair.
It was on the edge, but either way, the ball came back into play. Then there were balls kicked dead. It was almost like Harry went through the all the different kinds of kicks you could make a mistake of, and he did all of them, even kicking it out from a playoff. So there was definitely frustration on that. But then Leicester come out in that second half. They're down to 13 men, and they put in the one of the best blocks of play they put together in this European season. They managed to score while down. They managed to basically keep Toulon completely out of the game. It was basically Leinster on attack the whole time. Now they made heavy work of it, and their tries came after serious series of sustained pressure. And you could see certainly Gary Ringros's try, as well taken as it was, there was a bit of luck there in that it didn't go where I think it was supposed to go. Gary was just in the right place to grab it and finish. Caelan Doris is obviously the result of a massive effort, and you could see that in his face when he got across the line. And that block was good enough that if that had been it, you'd just be like, that was the performance they were looking for. The way it ended, I remember on 13 minutes to go, my mom again turned to me and said, surely that has to be it. It's 29-11. it has to be it. And I just said that we don't say that. We never say that because it never is. And I've been
Can
hurt
I
too
can
many
I butt in
times.
really quickly? It's
Yeah.
nice that you are finally on the same end of the stick as the rest of us for
It's
a
just
change.
miserable. See, you say that, but I was in that stadium when we lost to La Rochelle after having a 19-0
That's true.
lead to start it out
Ah,
with, you
no,
know?
it was 17.
17. It was
Yeah,
17 and now 18.
17.
yeah, 17. He missed two conversions. It
Okay.
was.
Um,
17-0, the most
so
dangerous lead in world rugby.
we had a
Well, it-
three-try lead and managed to not win that game. That was a final. I've seen us and then we had the time. Like I've seen us. Well, I didn't see the quarterfinal one because it was behind closed doors during COVID. But we've now lost quarterfinal, semi-final, and final in that stadium in the last 6 years. That's fucking heartbreaking. So we just never say it's done until it's actually done. And God bless Toulon. They were kind of in a do or die situation. There's nothing you can do in that situation except start firing shots. And when they started firing shots, they started getting them off. And I think there'll be a lot of frustration with. I think it was very frustrating when they scored the first try. A lot is made of the Galdrian effort after that because of some very dodgy defending from Sam Prendergast. But I think the other try is actually more frustrating because it came so soon after the Caelan Doris try that there was no reaction in the crowd. I don't know if you remember this, Caelan. The crowd didn't
yeah,
react when Toulon scored that first try because I don't think they realised it had happened. They got back down the field, played off a maul, and scored so fast. Nobody had even really fully reset from Leinster having scored.
it felt easier. It felt like they just walked up the field,
And
got their
that's the thing.
score.
Leinster had
Yeah,
worked so hard to get over. Like it was goal line pressure after goal line pressure after goal line pressure after me screaming at them to go wide. Jamie Osborne screaming for the ball, getting nothing. Even with advantage finally for Doris to put in this titanic effort to go across the whitewash and Toulon go back down the field and score again within like 60 seconds. Like that was maddening and it was slightly frightening, slightly unsettling. You're like, oh come on, you can't possibly like this is too big a lead with too little time left. But sure enough, it just seemed like once they get unsettled, they get really unsettled. And you know, credit where it's due. Saran getting the was it Baptiste Saran get the a pass from the deck, very nice throw back, and then the crossfield kick. No, it was kind of it was a nice kick in that it got it wide, but it was kind of a hospital pass. Like any reasonable defender should have just lined Dryan up. It doesn't matter how elusive the guy is. He has to catch the ball. You can see where it is. You just have to wait for it to be in his arms and then hit him. Like it should be a relatively straightforward thing to do. At the very least, you can stand on him until he catches it. And unfortunately for Sam Prendergast, he wasn't on the pitch for very long, and it still went really badly for him. He's played a fullback for Leinster before this season in against much easier opposition, and as is always the case with Sam, he looks very good going forward. He's able to find space. He's able to run actually reasonably well. He's definitely good at finding places where he can kick through. But his defense is just non-existent. Like Durham wouldn't have had any more difficult of a time getting through if there'd been no one there. You know, he always goes too high. He looks like he's grabbing at air, and you know the fact that Durham managed to get through there is really it's kind of unforgivable. Now Leinster managed to tighten it up after that. Very good bit of defense from John McCarthy to force Durant to come back in so Ioane could hit him and then the knock on occurred and we were able to get out. But it really felt like after what was up until that point a fairly rock solid measured performance. Imperfections in there, kicks missed that shouldn't have been missed. You know, a bit of hard driving where maybe you would have thought they should have gotten over easier. That last 13 minutes would scare the shit out of you because, you know, Toulon could have won. You would almost say
Mhm.
they if they had just gotten one more pass away, they would have. And you have to think going up against a team like Bordeaux, they're not even going to need that much space to do that much damage. So look, we're in a final. We're where everybody wants to be. At the end of the day, you can't win if you're not in the final. Leinster have got there again. There is 80 minutes of rugby, hoping we don't go to extra time again. There's 80 minutes of rugby between them and a trophy, and we'll see what they can pull out. I would hope you would have to hope that if they're building to anything, it's this 80 minutes. But are a very good attacking team. Leinster have the capacity to be very miserly in defence, but they need to keep it together. There were just a few cracks there that you would worry about how quickly Louis Bira and Matthew Jalibert, who's having a phenomenal run, will be able to get through them. But I do think there's just enough there for Leinster to have a pretty good chance of this. It's just whether or not they can keep it going for 80 minutes. Because in this game, they very nearly didn't.
Yeah, that's the thing. And just because you mentioned Jaliba there, I think if Leinster do manage to win this, I think we could have another. Remember Leon in Nakarawa 2018 got the Player of the Tournament awards after losing the final. I think Jalibert has. I think he has it sewn up personally. I do think Bordeaux will win, but I think he has it sewn up. You could have one of those moments. I think he's been so good. But Ben, one thing that David mentioned there is how he started to feel nervous. It wasn't done and dusted. I thought it was done and dusted. I'll hold my hand up, but I was a neutral arbiter. It's a little bit different. Um, and if the pressure was being felt in the stands, it was being felt by the players, it's being felt in the coaching box. And Leo Cullen's comments have spread like wildfire while also going down like a lead balloon at the same time. He was tetchy. He spoke like a man who's slightly under a bit of pressure. And for those who didn't see it, he basically accused the Irish rugby media. And I'm conscious that I work in the Irish rugby media, so I'll play a part in this, I suppose. People like us for wanting Leinster to lose. And it's quite remarkable because I genuinely do believe that there's what, three or four people who want Leinster to lose in the Irish rugby media. Like it was an insane rant, and
Like,
it speaks to pressure, doesn't
I do enjoy that you come for me. You come to me for this question on
it?
people in quote unquote IRM who want
I
Leinster to
probably
not
I
win
probably should
every
have
game.
taken this and given you the next one on ref chat, but
But
anyways.
no, look, what's weird is like I see where Cullen is coming from a lot of time in that I don't think it's that they want Leinster to lose, but there is just so much pressure piled on Leinster at every single opportunity. Like before the La Rochelle final, it was said they can't lose, they're at home, we have a fifth star. Last year against Northampton, people had written off Northampton. Media outside of us had written off Northampton the week before that game. It was said Leinster here, they're going to be in the final. Toulouse final, fine. Like everyone understood how good a Toulouse team was, and I think it'll be the same
To,
this year, where
Toulouse don't lose finals,
Toulouse
famously.
don't
They've won
lose
their last
finals.
nine. Last 10,
This
sorry.
this Bordeaux team are, for me, probably the best team in Europe on paper. We've seen they do with France. It must get very infuriating for Leo Cullen when you open up paper in the morning and you see, oh, Leinster are going to win again, and there's not a single piece of critique or actual analysis of what they're doing for most of their big games. I think, not to toot our own horn, we're quite good at being like, Leinster aren't actually all that great, they'll probably win anyway. Do I like him going back to a semi-final, which I thought ref had a really good game last year? David, I know you disagree. No, not really. I think Northampton were.
Can I throw something out there? I don't remember who was refereeing that game last year. That's usually a good sign. Like, do you know what I
I
mean?
have Bruce set in my head, but I might be wrong. It was
I
definitely
mean, it's
French.
probably French because it was a game against an English team, but that's usually a good sign. So,
And like I personally don't think it was a penalty try. I think Leinster lost that game to their own transience of not going for trees, which is a problem in prior seasons that they had. But as much as I'd love to be like Leo Cullen went off and won, and he shouldn't have. It's from a Munster fan POV, where we have been the attack of the Irish media for even small things we can't control. I see where he's coming from.
yeah. Well, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every word, and I will let you in a second, David. I'm not saying that every word Leo Cullen said was wrong. I just think that particular tangent was like, no, I don't agree.
This
Now, it's
the
impressive.
semi-final tangent was a little bit weird.
That
And
was a
to
bit
be like,
strange, but I think it did feed into his point then about like you never support us, you're not backing us up. But then I'm like, the same time, this is a Leinster team that is riddled with internationals almost to their own detriment. Like, and I don't mean that as like a genuine critique. I just mean it as like tongue in cheek. Almost to their own detriment, they're riddled with so many internationals and so many star players. So the pressure is naturally going to be on you.
and even to go
You
back
you
to
open up
our
you open up Midi Olympique, a famous Toulouse paper. They don't accept anything less than a European title.
like
Do you
it's a very
know?
small thing, but our preview to start to the season, I think anyone can come back and listen to it. We did say we went through all the fixtures this season. We said, can we pick games Leinster are actively going to lose here?
I think
And
the only one we got right was Pretoria and Glasgow. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure.
and like
I
if
think
that is
Cardiff
the
was
media
mentioned
coming
as well.
from the four of us, which are quote unquote impartial to a point, um, you can imagine how media based in Dublin is looking at they're the best team in the world. And then something goes wrong and they're either incredibly hounded or it's little head pats. And from Leo, it must be infuriating.
And I get it, but also at the same time, they weren't. They were a little bit more criticized last year. 2024, they weren't criticized. Like they weren't because everyone knows it's a final and it's Toulouse and Toulouse are a tough beat in finals. I actually think in 2023 was the worst example, more than any other one. Because in 2023, as David pointed out, they were 17 points up, and yet we still had pundits after the game saying, well, the URC didn't prepare them. Well, you didn't play your players in the URC. That's not the URC's fault. Hashtag best league. David, you wanted to jump in there on the whole Leo Cullen versus the world, which, again, I respect him for it. I don't agree with it, but I respect him for it. Your thoughts?
Can we title the podcast that?
Yeah.
What, Leo Cullen against the world? No, I already
Yes.
have like
Sorry,
Road to
David.
Bilbao to make it
No,
seem
it's
like a
okay.
travel show. Well,
Yeah, I think I just like I would have a few thoughts on it. One is that like I think it's if you just take the statement at face value, I don't know if it's fair to say, first of all, it's completely I I don't know if you meant to say it or meant to phrase it like this. The idea that the media, any media really, unless you're the Limerick leader, like sorry, but
that
the
felt
idea that
pointed.
or the Dublin Inquirer, sorry. Unless you're no media should be cheering for a team. That's not their job. Like it's not an election. You're not an
Not
editorial
not
board. Like there's
national
no
media.
not
Not
national
national.
media,
Yeah.
local media, sure, but like even then, it's like yeah, that's fine. The idea that I think that's I would even um dignify that one with much. I think it was kind of a throwaway to a degree. What I would say is to his point about media love to get the boot in. I don't know if I'd go that far. What I would say is Leinster in the state that they're in, where they get really far in competitions, they get to finals, they get to semi-finals, they play peerless rugby and then somehow don't win the trophy. They are possibly the juiciest carcass a media landscape could want for. Because if they were just winning all the time, it'd be boring. Like if
That's
Leinster
true.
were winning all the games that Leinster feel like they should, or that some people have said Leinster feel like they should, what's the story there? This team,
Well,
they won
we
again.
said this. They're more
Like
interesting this year.
they're much more they're more interesting this year, but this year is like a microcosm of they're much more interesting because they lose. If they didn't lose, there wouldn't be half the stories. There wouldn't be half the column images. So I don't think it's fair to say they'd love to get the boot in. I think it's fair to say when you lose, oh, they're going to dine out. Because, and to be fair, like they have jobs to do. It's a much more interesting story because Leinster lose and because they keep finding new and inventive ways to lose in different places for different reasons. And so I think he's not wrong there. I think it's kind of churlish to have an issue with it. At the end of the day, it is a story. At the end of the day, Leinster are lined up to win so many of these games and then don't. And it's not just the media who have a problem with it. Fans have a massive problem with it. They haven't really gotten to the point of calling for Leo Cullen's head because I think there's some kind, in a way, I think people like Stuart Lancaster and Jack Nienaber kind of stand both as um hogs for certain amounts of glory, but they stand as excellent shields because really, when things go wrong rugby-wise, nobody really blames Cullen because nobody thinks that he's the one coaching them. Not in that way. He's the one selecting the team, and he definitely took the flak for the Jordy Barrett selection as well. He should, even though he's not the only one making decisions. But when it comes to rugby, it's all Stuart Lancaster had us playing great. Jack Nienaber has us playing differently. It's never Leo Cullen's tactics because I think there's some level of belief that he's not that involved in that. But I think it's churlish not to have some acceptance that when you find new and inventive ways to lose games that people think you should win, they're going to have a feast because what else are they going to do? Now, what I would say is it is possibly, and a lot of people in the media, and I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong to do this, but a lot of people in the broader media landscape have possibly taken the bait because people don't always mean exactly what they say. And while Leo Cullen might have been taking an opportunity to vent his frustrations, he was also completely successfully deflecting all attention away from Leinster because no one's really talking about Leinster specifically anymore. They're not talking about Toulon performance. They're not talking about if Nina Barr's defense is good enough anymore. They're not talking about if Cullen should go. They're talking about he attacked us. They're in defense. The position that Leinster have found themselves in because of their consistent losses, people in that broader media landscape have now felt the need to come out and defend themselves in podcasts and articles and the like. So from that point of view, it worked. It's not going to. It probably won't work again. It's probably not going to happen again. But I do think there's a layer to which you have to be like, if one side can play the game, the other side can play the game too. And Leo Cullen has been doing this a while. Um, Jack
He's literally
Nienaber,
a
sorry,
director of a family company in communications.
oh,
You know,
sorry, not Jack Nienaber, Razzie Erasmus does this all the time. He probably does it a little bit cleverer than Cullen because he's more practiced at it. But I think Cullen did. I think he got pretty much exactly what he wanted to get out of what he said. And I don't think it was just to say that everybody's been mean to Leinster. I think there was a little bit more to it than that. So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was an interesting one. And like, if nothing else, it was an interesting press conference. I listened to it on a run, which is,
That's saying something
yeah.
because it's their press conferences. They're usually quite dull. I'm in enough of them. They're quite dull. I actually missed this one. So it wasn't directed as me before anyone else. It wasn't. I missed this one. But I know what it's like when Leo Cullen kind of stares you down, and he has this incredible knack of asking the question back to you, almost to kind of like lead you into hearing it a certain way. Like he is a very good communicator, like Leo Cullen. Like to give him his credit there. I will say there's always a chance that that's not directed towards the written media. There's always a chance that's towards pundits that used to play alongside him, play with them, play under him. There's always that too. Although I do feel that of any team's ex-pros, I do think Leinster's are probably the more forgiving, and there's a couple who come to mind. But there are, like to give me an example, I think Ian Madigan's one of the best analysts in Irish rugby at the moment. Maybe it's someone like him that he's looking at. I'm not saying it is, but maybe you don't know. Another talking point for the weekend has been ref chat. And I don't know the last time I did this, and I've weighed in on this a couple of times. But for the love of God, can we stop being so sanctimonious in this country about ref chat? Not that I think Luke Pearce had a fine game. I think that Nika the following day had a good game. I don't think he had his best game, but I think he had a good game. But it's amazing how we've spent more time talking about Luke Pearce, or as much time Luke Pearce bad, as well as French TV directors, as if Irish rugby don't get calls. Like they don't get the benefit of these things from time to time. And I've seen it on other like Leinster podcasts on national airwaves, and obviously the famous Andy Good versus Squidge squabble that's going on at the moment. Look, you can choose your sides there accordingly. But I just find it so annoying because for me, and having been there and watched the game, I thought Luke Pearce had a good game. The only call, right, that I think he may have got wrong was the tackle on Rico Ioane. But, and I said this at the time, watching it on the screen in front of me, I couldn't see clear head contact because it felt like the two of them were moving away from each other and never made head contact in this weird, do you know what I mean? And look, that was just me on one screen,
So
that's quite
on
blurry.
TV, that's what Luke said. Pierce
Mm,
asked multiple times, "Can you tell me to?" I think it was tempo, wasn't it? Is
yeah.
there head contact? And neither of them could actually make it out firmly. And now we've had angles since, and actually, oh, David, an apology because I fought with him about this on Saturday. Um, we have an angle since that show head contact, but based on the live images that Pierce had that the Irish TV director was giving, there wasn't head contact.
Yeah.
Now
And
look,
I thought he made the right call. That's probably the only one. To be fair, there was a scrum penalty early on, but I think I said it to you. If the only thing I'm pointing out is one scrum call that I think went the wrong way, you're having a very good game. Like in general, like that's the way it is. But it's so funny how we had like after Ireland South Africa this year, after this game, obviously Leo Cullen felt aggrieved about last year's semi-final. But we've had it so many times where Irish pundits and Irish podcasts will come out and they talk about the referee. And there's this weird thing about like English referees don't like Leinster. No, it's just Leinster play more big games against French teams. They get more English referees. Like that's all it is. It's not Leinster. Like Matthew Carey doesn't hate Leinster. It's just that no English team are on Leinster's level, so they don't have French referees in big games. Like, do you know what I mean? I just find it so, and it's not that we've discussed referees before. We've discussed wrong calls. We've discussed these things. I think you can analyze a referee's performance without going in with the mindset of, oh, Luke Pearce hates us. I can't even remember the last time Luke Pearce did a Leinster game, to be quite honest, of any particular. Matthew Carley has done a fair few, in fairness, but I can't remember the last time Luke Pearce did one of like a proper circumstance. So I'm like, that's just like you won, like get over it. And like to his credit, like Brett Igo, who people would know if they listened to the RG podcast today, I thought he was really good in this. He was like, Leinster didn't analyze Luke Pearce. He has a certain way of ref in the breakdown, which is I'm only going to give like the really stupid things, and they give away some stupid penalties, like the Doris one, and I think there was a McCarthy one as well, where it's like so blatantly obvious. Don't give away those ones. Do you know what I mean? Don't test him. He doesn't want to be tested. He wants to, lay
Doris
down his
asked
authority.
Pierce as well, and it was excellent. He was like, Doris said, "What do I need to do more in the Jackal?"
Mm.
And Luke, to his credit, was like, "Yeah, you're probably right to ask from trying to do fairness on both sides." Because there was
And Pierce is good at that. He's good at taking things in. One of
and
the
he
better
speaks
referees I've ever.
French.
And he speaks French. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, Dave Ribbons was like the other captain. You could just spoke to him, but
but it was excellent to have like that level of discourse, and we don't do ref chat, but for him to be like, "Yeah, you know what, Kalen, you're probably correct to ask."
yeah.
Um, just the French JVG, I think, did have a point that the French TV director was awful.
Possibly.
Um,
But then at the same time, like Baz were also rat's and
yes,
pillars
yes,
both. So.
it wasn't game defining, but like, and I hope we don't get back to a point in World Rugby where we have French TV director costs team A, B, C, D, E. Hello, Puka.
But then again,
For those of you on
it's a
YouTube.
cliche, and it's just going to keep going. So
Yeah.
there's all that. But good that we mentioned Caelan Doris because that's the next jump off point. And Adam, I'm going to bring you in here because Caelan Doris was arguably player of the match. The man who won player of the match was Andrew Porter. Um, Two unbelievable performances, and it just goes to show because I think one thing that could be thrown at Leinster last year's semi-final of their big players not showing up on the big day, that was not the case here when it came to these two guys.
No, not at all. I think they both had really, really just like barnstorming games is probably the one that we need to mention. I think Doris played a game that was just so clinical. I think he took his try really well. Um, just it was almost like when you look at a player like Doris that you expect those type of performances, but when you have a performance that makes you sit up out of your seat, you're like, oh yeah, he's we expect world class, but this is world class. It's the same with Andrew Porter. I think with Porter having injuries here and there this season, I think, it's not that we'd almost forget his class. That's a silly thing to say, but it's a nice reminder that there is so much talent that comes out of a province, like Leinster, and they're doing so well compared to like last season with the Northampton semi-final. This is almost sort of brushed over everything. I'd even say Rico Iwani's, I think one involvement as well. I know this is about Porter and Doris,
Mhm.
but something that I wanted to point out was it was just before the first try. He did an absolutely ridiculous thing that I've never seen a player do, but staying in. And they've even checked it, and it was literally by like a little white blade of glass. And I was like, glass, sorry, grass. And I was like, that is ridiculous. I was like, you do show your class as a player, but like, is there bits of luck or is there bits of skill there? But I was like, that was utterly
He was very
ridiculous.
good as well, it should be
Yeah,
said.
he
Like the
was.
one thing that I would have said about Rico Ioane was he was never going to be the level raiser against Cardiff or against Glasgow and the games where you're just going through the motions. It was always going to be the games like these that you'd see him if he was going to perform, and he did.
He did. I think he was I think wing is his best position for Leinster as well. Like I think that sort of back three pairing of O'Brien, Ioane and Hugo Keenan, it worked out really well. I think, there was like lots of moments where also Hugo Keenan showed his class as well. Like there's all these big players performing at the highest stage, almost made up for the likes of, as we mentioned before, the sort of uneasy game that Harry Byrne had because Gibson Park played so well. They were just playing off nine, and that made the most sense. Same as when Prendergast came on as well. You've got such a good team around those type of players that, lapses of confidence, lapses of judgment, things like that can almost not be forgiven, but they can be like, oh yeah, but we've got this and we've got this, and
Yeah.
then the likes of Cullen Doris has that massive performance, the same as Andrew Porter. Jamie Osborne coming off the bench. That's the thing I would say. Like, hope Robbie Henshaw's okay. He was off. He was standing up and he was walking around afterwards. But I thought Jamie Osborne had a monumental effort in defense when he came on, and I felt like they didn't take a step backwards because of that. You know, all these players were playing so well, and you know, they're putting themselves in a good chance of recreating the events that happened 8 years ago in Bilbao because of that.
Yeah.
Because Leinster hitting form at this time of year is a very terrifying prospect for not, well, it's a very exciting prospect for David, but for us three, it's terrifying.
It's a fair point. The one thing I will say about Jamie Osborne, and this is not a critique, this is more of what I hear. he is an underrated defender. I think he's an overrated attacker because I think there's this like brawl for the next big thing. Oh, naturally in every sport, next big thing is always a great attacker. I think he's an overrated attacker. I think he's a wonderful defender. I really do. I think his ability to defend so well at both 12 and 15, which are two so different positions, I think is something to be heralded.
Very
David,
first
just
thing he
one
ever did in pro rugby was he came on when he was 19 years old against one of the Welsh teams, and I
Scarlets.
remember the comms saying questions were asked if he was ready for this level because he's so young, and the first thing he did was absolutely smash a dude and push him back meters in defense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with you on that one, Kellen. I do think, particularly like when he was stepping in for Hugo Keenan, and people were saying, "Oh, Keenan will have to fight for his way back into this." Um, I do think Keenan's a bit better going forward, and he's by no means the best attacking fullback in the world either. But yeah, Osborne, it's not a weakness, but it's definitely not a super strength as much as his defensive play is.
Just one last thing, David, on this game, because we mentioned the fact that it got so close, so narrow. It really did come down to a dropped offload. I know if it did go down to that, we'd have been talking about different things. I understand. But what stood out to me was the benches. And this was always going to be a factor. When Bastien Saran was on the bench, and I'm going to hold my hands up here, guys. I don't rate Ben White. I don't rate Ben White. I don't get it. He's one of those players, him, Albornoz, and Brex. I don't get it. I think they're good. I think they're so overrated, to be honest. But I'm in a ranting mood this evening, as
I
you can
never knew
tell.
you didn't like the Arsenal left back.
Right back actually.
Right back. Oh,
Formerly
shit.
of Brighton, which is a lovely town.
Was
But no,
he?
I just yeah, he was with Brighton for a while before he went to Arsenal. I think he went on loan either to Leeds or to. Anyway, we're getting
Wait, the
sidetracked.
Scottish scrum half that plays for too long.
No, the Scottish scrum half actually used to play for London Irish, believe it or not. Don't ask about their his former halfback teammate. Anyways, David, what I was going to say is the benches made a huge difference in this game. We knew it was going to be a factor, but it ended up being massive. And if you've any hesitancy about Leinster going forward, it's that maybe those injuries and that bit of depth is going to show in the benches and those last 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, it is a concern because like I think going into this game we knew that there wasn't necessarily as much. It definitely wasn't a bench that we wanted to chase in the game. There wasn't a bench that had to chase the game. Um, but I think it's been a kind of a problem for Leinster more in other games as well that the depth hasn't been as faultless necessarily as it would have been in seasons gone by. Now, a part of that is due to injury, like the loose head injury depth is obviously a running joke at this time. It is a weird thing that we've actually kind of managed to pull our way out of. Andrew Porter coming back is massive, but Jerry Kerr, like just coming out of the AIL and being able to hold that position down has been phenomenal, and he's now earned his way into a Connacht senior contract. So congratulations to him. But yeah, no, there would be a slight concern that Leinster maybe were used to having almost as good on the bench, certainly in the front row and other positions
Last
as
year's semi-final, for instance,
yeah,
they packed the bench.
and you just would be concerned about how well they can juggle that now. Um, impact wise, they made a very interesting decision in this game, which actually ended up not backfiring because it actually ended up working. Lucky generals and all that to have two back rows. There's 5-3 bench, but have two back rows. And then have Jack Conan and Josh van der Fleer have to come off, which is kind of almost you would accuse Cullen of witchcraft on that front. But it is a risk, and it's possibly a risk he made because outside of James Ryan and Joe McCarthy, he didn't see, say, a Brian Deeney or a Dermot Mangan having, or even a Conor O'Tierney having as big an impact on the game as Soroka and Penny were able to. So, yeah, it is a concern. It's a very interesting one as well when you come to the backs because it's a question now of do you pick Sam Prendergast again, or do you switch back to Kieran Frawley? And that's one that I think we'll call for. I think that's possibly one of the biggest selection decisions in a weird way because the coin you're flipping there is you're you're not really you're bringing them on to match different positions. if Sam Prendergast is on that bench, he's coming on at 10 or he's not coming on. Realistically, you can't bring him on in the final in any position but 10. And if Kieran Frawley's on the bench, he's probably going to come on at fullback or inside centre. And I think there's a really weird balance that Cullen will have to strike there because um, as damaging as it was to have Prendergast at fullback, like Bordeaux will eat him alive if he comes off the bench and plays back there. You could actually see Melvin Jaminet start running laterally as soon as Sam Prendergast was on the pitch, looking for him. As soon as he knew he was in the backfield, he was looking for him. If we have that kind of weakness off the bench again, then those last 10 minutes could be decisive. The flip to that is Kieran Frawley has not played a lot of 10 this season, and 10 has not been his strongest position. Even though he's going to Connacht with the idea of playing there, it has not been his strongest position historically for Leinster. And if something happened to Harry Burn in the first 5 minutes and you were stuck with Kieran Frawley playing a whole game, that could be its own decisive factor. So yeah, like the bench is and that's just to talk about one position. 23 is a weird one where you're looking for, do you want versatility or do you want impact? Um, 9, that kind of writes itself. It has to be Luke McGrath. It's not going to be anyone else. And then yeah, those again. Does he go 6-2 and then take the risk? If he does, then it's just Kieran Frawley. But yeah, it's a weird one where I'm used to Leinster teams and even Leinster benches being much more certain. Like I don't know that I usually go into a final not being 100% sure of what the 23 is going to be, absent injury decisions. Right now, I don't know. I don't know that I could say with 100% certainty who Cullen is going to choose on the bench. I could probably pick the starting 15, but even that's only probably depending on one or two people coming back from injury. But yeah, it's definitely a concern that in a game that is going to have to be 80 minutes, and I said that earlier in the Toulon discussion, it has to be an 80-minute effort because it's a final against a very good team who will not stop for 80 minutes. It'll be a question of can Leinster go for those 80 minutes and how much of that would be reliant on that first 15 just sticking it out.
Yeah, 100%. Before we get on to Ulster, now is a good time to say that let the global gain line and specifically the InterPro show, which is us, be your home for EPCR finals week. We're hoping to have individual Leinster and Ulster focus podcasts, a daily dose of some of us, anyways, your favorite quartet. So get listening, get sharing, come join us, join the madness, and it'll be even madder on that week in particular, unless Adam and David are just so wretched with nerves that they can't speak, which is always possible. Look, we've all been there. We've all been there, guys. But from Dublin to Belfast and in time order once again, as with a second half flurry saw Ulster return to finals weekend for just the third time in their history with a 29-12 win over Exeter. Adam, I know you were away from Ravenhill. I know that would have disappointed you, but your initial thoughts on the fact that Ulster are back in a final.
Um, it fills me with so much unbridled joy that I can't really come across because
I
I
thought you
think
were
I
going. I
might.
just thought you were going to say something. To be
I
honest.
I don't know. I gave quite an emotional answer. It's like I feel like I might tear up if I think about anything involving Ulster Trophy. It's been too long and it's been yeah, it's been amazing. I think Richie. There's a little video of Richie in the changing rooms after going, "We're heading to the Bow Boys," and everyone's like, "Way!" And I'm like, "Oh, this is class." But yeah, the only sad thing about it is I can't. If we do, if it does happen, I can't make fun of the Amlin Challenge 2013 triumph of Leinster with Isa Nuthera and Johnny Sexton lifting the trophy. But different strokes for different folks.
Can't believe you got that into your initial answer. That's incredible. We'll come back to it in a few minutes, anyways. But certainly, look, an unbelievable rebuild going on, and to cite that RT podcast again, one thing that I did agree with from Brett, I go on that is Ulster are not the complete package. They still have 3 to 5 more players that they need to get in there to really round out their squad, but they're in the European final. And I don't know if I said at the start of the year or how I judged them. I think we may have all said semi-finals of Challenge Cup for Ulster. I think that's what we landed on.
I think I said final.
Oh, that's you should have put your money where your mouth is.
I should have.
I may have chickened out. I think I went semi-final at the time. But for me, it was like, well, your toughest pool game is Cardiff at home. So yeah, go on a run, target this, do this, and see how the URC is going. And yes, it's very possible that Ulster fall tonight and they miss out, and all these things are possible. But as of right now, Ulster are in a great position, and this rebuild is going very well. But injuries are a factor. We'll get onto that, and well, get onto that slightly with yourself now, David. But injuries. One man who picked up an injury was Jacob Stockdale. He had that tackle in the first half on Emmanuel Feo-Boso. And if there is a moment where this game swings, if Jacob Stockdale gets sent off there, it arguably becomes a very different game because it was one of those tackles where it's like, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah, it was one where you like I don't know, we've all been in a position where we said it where you like I've seen those given and
Mm.
yeah, you have seen those given. And yeah, that's the thing. Like it's got to be the massive frustration. Now I don't think it's this one or not, he hasn't been cited. But like it is
He
that
is
thing of
injured
going,
anyways, so probably
I
doesn't
know,
make
but
a
that
difference.
doesn't necessarily stop him being cited, you know.
It's a medical
So
site.
it's put the extra boot in. But that's actually a good question. If you're missing through injury, does your citation wait until you're fit again?
No, I
I
think
don't think
it
so.
goes
Okay.
through. Yeah.
Famously,
Um,
Joe Marler got a suspension before COVID, and it did not extend, so he missed zero rugby.
that is interesting.
Wow.
Mm.
Um,
And he's a gobshite. What?
so yeah, no, it's look, I mean, it's no, it would be no balm to Exeter one way or the other. You know, once the match is done, it's done. But yeah, no, there's sliding over moments like that in the game. I think it's interesting as well. I was looking back over the thing, Ulster and Exeter both being fans of having players who aren't their 10 kicking. It was such a like kind of a I don't know, it was such a solidly once they got into the game, Ulster, they kind of didn't let Exeter back in, to keep chipping away. It took a while to get going, not scoring their first points until 27 minutes. That's probably later in the game than you would ideally see it happening. But to then go 27 minutes, 40 minutes for the penalty, 46 minutes for the next try, 57 minutes for the next try. Like that's a solid block of like the middle like 30 minutes of the game where they just did the job. And unlike Leinster, whereas they did let in one final try, but it was when the clock was in the red and there was nothing on the line. Like they did the work when they had to. They it was in a really positive way. It was a businessman like we did what we had to do. We got the job done. We never let them get near it. I didn't get to watch it live, but seeing the scoreline, I just thought I hoped Ulster would win. I was pulling for them. I didn't expect them to be that to be that dominant because Exeter had been trending well. Would have been optimistic. I think going into this, I would have thought that certainly Exeter had more chance of beating Ulster than Toulon should have had of beating Leinster. It just shows you how wrong it can be because Ulster, once they got going, never really let Exeter back into it. And I think for that team of players, you could see Jack Murphy, you could see the what it meant to him, like to have gone through the path that he's taken, the slightly non-traditional path of not getting into not making it in the province that he's from, moving up north, becoming the starting 10, then being coached under his dad, which is complicated from an emotional point of view. This team of players has not have the experience of being in a final. So, Adam joked about not being able to take the mick out of the Amlin Cup. It's because the Challenge Cup doesn't mean anything until you actually win it, and then it's pretty cool. Like at the end of the day, a trophy is a trophy, medals are medals, and you'd rather have one in the case than not. And I think if a team had to choose between knockouts and not winning a URC and no knockouts, but not that that will happen to Ulster, but no knockouts and winning a Challenge Cup, like I think you'd take the trophy every day of the week because it is a trophy. And there's some serious teams in there. Exeter are a serious team. Montpellier are a serious team. The Dragons in Montpellier are a serious
That's
team.
unnecessary.
And
That's
They
mean.
were good. They
No,
were
it's
all
not
right.
entirely
They
accurate.
were all
and
right.
if Ulster win it, they win it even though other teams, I'm not going to name another team because I'm not mean, La Rochelle were in the Challenge Cup as well. There were the other serious teams in the competition who aren't in the final. So whatever anybody says about how much it means to whoever, and I took the big out of the Dragons because, why not? But they actually did it. They got to the semi-final where loads of other very serious teams didn't. And I think now that they're there, if you said it to any of the teams who've been knocked out of the Challenge Cup to this point, they'd all absolutely take Ulster's position if they could. So I think it was a really convincing performance from Ulster. They've put themselves in a position that they may not have seen, may not have thought was necessarily going to happen at the start of the season. But considering they're one of the teams who started in the Challenge Cup, this is, ideal scenario. There is no downside to this. This isn't a we dropped down and we made the best of it. They were in the Challenge Cup from the start. They took the bull by the horns and they have now got themselves into a final. It is all to play for. I said it to Adam. I think now I wouldn't be feeling this way if I was an Ulster supporter, but they're playing with house money. They have gotten to a final. They're 80 minutes of rugby away from lifting a trophy for the first time in more years than they'd be comfortable with. I think it sets up a really phenomenal showdown in Bilbao, and whether or not they win, hoping they do, it's such a big moment. It's such a big experience for those players. And you would hope, if you're an Ulster supporter, that it will set the platform to go, this is where we belong. This is where we're going to stay. It's a young enough team. There's really good players coming through. There's no reason why this can't become a regular thing for them going forward.
Adam, do you want to respond to that before we move off Ulster? Because it does kind of feel, to use the line, to paraphrase the line Peter Manny gave after Munster won the URC in 23, these games just give you an appetite to get back. That's the most important thing. So in that regard, it does feel year defining. But at the same time, the shackles are kind of off, do you know?
Yeah, I think, part of like I think the Irish rugby identity and also Ulster as well as Leinster and Munster have shown it in the past is that we're not very like coping with knockout games. I feel like it's always been something that we haven't sort of like, especially Ulster over the past couple of years. Like you have to remember, I think it was just back in COVID where we got knocked out of a Challenge Cup semi-final. I think it was against Harlequins.
Leicester.
It was Leicester. Yeah, it was Harlequins to then goes to Leicester, and then we did it again in Richie Murphy's first season where we got beat by, I think it was Montpellier. Um,
Yeah.
Richie. So,
No, Claremont, wasn't it? Or did you
oh,
win with
we beat
Claremont?
Montpellier. We got beat by Claremont. Right. Okay. Yeah. So, teams like this, like I mentioned just before the podcast started, five out of the players that played in our last big knockout, our last big semi-final against the Stormers, um, only five of them were playing that game. This is a really new team. This is a really exciting team. To have that taste of this final, and you have the likes of Jack Murphy giving it absolutely everything, and his pure electricity coming through when he scored that try of just like, come on. It means a lot. Like I think you know, we all say like you could say like we've got the money in our hands and stuff like that. I also think that you can say that this Ulster team with the likes of Jude Postlewaite playing like a man possessed at the age that he is as well, a trophy like this can only start the hunger that we've been trying to satisfy for the past 21 odd years. 2005, I was only 3 years old. I wasn't there in 99. I need my 99 because my dad keeps on talking about 99. Um, you know, this, a 99 with a tan, Bilbao. I'm a Spurs fan. I saw them win the Europa League last year in Bilbao. Is it fate? I don't know.
He's
But
getting excited,
I,
lads.
I, I'm getting very excited. But it's one of those things where,
He's two lines
have
away
you.
from saying it's coming home or something.
No,
Would be
no,
like him.
no. I am in England, to be fair. But Ian Henderson also had an exceptional game as well. I think Ian Henderson also had a great game. Like, there's loads of players that I think, having Bryn Board coming off the bench is pretty handy as well. Having Connor McKee come on for Stuart McCloskey due to an injury, that was a thing that I never would see in a European Cup semi-final. But we've got all these players with that are talents, but we also need this now to like transpire into the words of Richie Murphy saying like, we mentioned about how complicated like having his son in the team is. He's like, I don't really coach him. I leave that to Mark Sexton and Dan Soper, and then I coach the rest of the team around that as well. It's such a well-oiled machine, and I feel like judging from where we were, what, this time 2 years ago, the start of last season, we sacked a coach midway through a season and we were sort of like, now what? The revitalization, the path that we've had to this final, it's gonna feel like, well, as we say, I'm excited now. Just ask me on the two or three or four podcasts I'm gonna be on that week how I'm gonna be feeling. But at the minute it's excitement. At the minute it's, relief that we got to a final, a European final as well at that.
Yeah, well, we shall see. Ben, just going to bring you in a word. Can they?
Yeah, yeah, Ulster should. And I think for Adam, if no one else, I'd love to see him do it. We got one Irish
Yeah.
trophy this year, please.
Adam is the one we all have a soft spot for. I'm sorry. I don't know. How did it happen? We're gonna have to replace you with some
Uh,
like grizzly veteran who just like makes us go, oh, rivalries are better.
See, see, the thing is, like, I like to be like the one that's like not relatable, because the Leinster comments hate me on the last United Rewind because I compared them to Man City. I, I,
Not the first time.
Let's just say we've all been there.
I don't
And
want you to
yeah,
repeat it, but I really need to listen to this. Go
but
follow me to Rugby Rewind, everybody.
we'll
yeah,
we'll we'll do it afterwards. We'll do it afterwards. I need to get into previews. Sorry, Adam. I do need to get into previews for next week
boo.
because we've got four games to cover. Next week is arguably the biggest weekend of the year. We have Ulster Stormers, Leinster Lions, Ireland women against Wales in the Affidea, and Connacht against Munster. Adam, lucky you. We can go back to you straight away. A win for Ulster here, playoff secured, top eight secured, and potentially, even though it's highly unlikely, but potentially a home quarter final on the horizon. Can they, again, to use that term?
For the sake of the Ulster Independent Hospital, I hope not. Yeah, the amount of the amount
I
of
thought I was
injuries
going
that
to
we've
go
had.
in a different direction.
No, no.
I did.
But for for the independent clinic, I hope not, because we've got a lot of injuries. I'm really humming and hawing in the fact that I think all we really need in theory is a Connacht loss and we're
That is correct.
okay. And I'm also really conscious that, we've got the Stormers in Glasgow up ahead, we've got a final up ahead. It's just sort of
Potential
like a
URC quarterfinal.
potential URC quarterfinal. It's like how many, like our squad's already been tested. We've got a lot of injuries. Stuart McCluskey is looking like a doubt. He is a doubt, and the likes of Stockdale's also a doubt. But we'll find players, I hope, to fit the team. A win against the Stormers would be really good. I think we need the one of the two against Glasgow or Stormers. It's just where we really throw at it. Where we throw the kitchen sink at it, that's for Richie to decide, and thank goodness it's not me to decide. But yeah, hopefully an Ulster win.
Hopefully, hopefully. Saturday, 5:30, Premier Sports, Leinster, who are in fourth, against Lions, who are in third. David, the Lions haven't won outside South Africa in the URC all season, so Leinster should win.
Leinster should win, realistically. It'll be very interesting to see what team Cullen decides to put out. He kind of subverted expectations in the 2 weeks previous to the semi-final, when he put out much stronger teams in those games. And I suppose, given the fact that we then made it to the final, you could argue that it worked. So maybe he'll do the same thing. You have to imagine that if there's going to be a game that Leinster goes slightly stronger for, it's probably this one, both because the Lions are better than Ospreys and also because it gives them 2 weeks running and then to the final. So yeah, it could change my mind if the teams come out and the Lions are stacked and Leinster are playing the kids. But I feel like this is a game Leinster really should be winning. Two home matches to finish the season, even with a final at the end. Um, there's been too many times now this season, having gone 10 from 16, when Leinster had a gilt-edged opportunity to put themselves in first. That's probably beyond the reach now, but I don't think second is, and I don't think this team should accept much less than two wins, and one of them at least should be a VP, because there's just the caliber of teams that is coming up against them. The fact that it's at home, and the fact that it should be seen as a build into a final rather than two completely separate days out. Yeah, no, I think it has to be a Leinster win. Doesn't mean it will be, no, but it really, really, really should be.
I agree. I think Leinster will pick up 10 points. I think Leinster are going to finish top 2 in the league, if I'm perfectly honest. Ireland against Wales in the Women's Six Nations half-6. That's in Belfast. That's on RTÉ2. I'll take this one. I think Ireland will win this. Wales have not looked that impressive. Ireland will be hurt. They'll be gunning for this one. I think Ireland will get over the line. I think they'll roll into over 25,000 in the Aviva next week. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be there. I think David, you're there,
Yeah,
right?
I'll be there. Yeah.
We need to talk about that actually. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Then Connacht against Munster, the InterPro, the big one. Connacht season's on the line. Munster's season, they kind of have 2 games to make sure they get top 8, but they could kind of get a home quarter final. I do think Connacht are going to win this. Of course I do. Ben, which way are you leaning?
7:45 in the Dexcom. Munster's first time up there. No thank you coming on social media. What's that about, Connacht? Just checking. We sold it out too. Where's our thank you? Well, look, we're Munster decimated by injuries this week. Jack is back, but we're down. Calvin Nash, Tyg Byrne,
Jaeger, Klein,
Farrell, all out. It's a big ask. Like, beating Ulster should probably guarantee us top 8. We'll beat the Lions in Thomond Park. Spoiler, not here next week. Spoilers for everyone. We'll beat Lions in Thomond Park. I'd take an LBP out of Galway right now. But again, the carrot is there. Get the win. Get a home quarter-final. Potentially get a home semi-final. It's not going to be easy. That Connacht injury report was far too good for my liking today, I must say.
My prediction is Ulster and Munster will both pick up 6 points from their next 2 games. That's my prediction. Yeah. So I think Connacht will win this, and then they will go back to Murrayfield. I know it's the Hive, but back to Murrayfield.
I don't think Connacht will get a BP against Munster, which could
I could see it being low scoring. I think it could be a defensive game potentially, but you don't know. It could open up. These interpros in recent years have become much more
4
open.
For Connacht still keeps them 9th.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's all on. If Ulster win, the pressure ramps up.
But if we presume Ulster win, yes. Sorry, if we presume
Ulster win. But gentlemen, I think that's all we have time for. Speaking of Connacht, we have our breakaway podcast for next season almost finished. We might even introduce you to some of those people in the coming weeks. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You also know the 3 lads on screen. that's part of it as well. But Adam says hello. For those on audio. But yeah, we're looking for Connacht contributors. So do comment down below if you are interested. Do reach out to the page on Twitter or whatever. Comment section is a little bit easier. It's easier to find because Twitter.
You can definitely make friends in the comment section. There's some lovely folks down that way.
Yeah,
they know us real well.
Really?
Yeah,
that's your experience. Look, poor Adam
they come back every week. They come back every week. What more can we ask for? Come and join us.
That's more than some of our own friends. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah, we do appreciate those comments in all seriousness. To be fair,
I'll end it on this. I gave a talk recently at my old school, and I said that I've done over 250 podcasts since the start of 2022, and I did have to preface it with, I swear I have a social life, but this also counts as my social life. But on that bombshell, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. We'll be back next week to look back on the penultimate round of URC action, where hopefully we see a good weekend for the provinces. We shall see. Until next time, from myself, Cullen, from all the lads, take it easy.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League, with me, Serge.
And me, James.
Where we bring you the best analysis of all the Premier League action and how it can help you beat your mini-league rivals and climb up the FPL ranks. Just search Planet FPL wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like the Let Me Be Frank podcast. You want big opinions, special guests, and all the talking points around the huge summer of international football. Join me, Frank McAvenny, and Simon Houston for the Let Me Be Frank podcast. Just search Let Me Be Frank wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.